What's good, y'all? Welcome back. Excuse the hair. Need a retwist very bad, but here to talk some playoff basketball with y'all. I know I said I'm gonna be more consistent, but there has not been much to talk about over like the last week. Like the conference finals started, but 3 of the first 4 games were just not fun. Like they weren't fun for an NBA fan experience. So I decided not to record. I probably could have recorded after the Warriors game 2 win against the Mavs to go 2-0 because that was a good game, but I'm decided not to. And the only other thing like noteworthy that happened like over the last week is like the draft lottery. Shout out to who won? Shout out to the Magic for winning the draft lottery. I just completely drew a blank. Yeah, I can't wait to start talking about off-season content, man, because that's on my favorite part. I love basketball. I love watching playoff basketball. But the off-season is where the money is, man. That's where, like, as a content creator, you really get a lot more traction talking about off-season moves. But yeah, we'll get to that at some point. But let's talk about game 3 tonight. Boston, Miami. Celtics completely dominated game 2. And really outside of the third quarter in game 1, the Celtics dominated those first 2 games. I mean, pretty much. I mean, maybe not dominated game 1, but they were in control of game 1 for most of it. First half, they were in total control. And then third quarter, the Heat blew it open. No Al Horford or Smart in game 1, which I think was big for that game. And it was big for the Heat to get that game 1 win because the Celtics completely dominated game 2. And then I think a lot of people, me included, I was trying not to have this feeling, but it just felt like the Heat were overmatched. And every time you count the Miami Heat out, they find a way to win a big game. And they did that tonight. Jimmy Butler played the first half, but he did look like he was just kind of like not being aggressive. And then found out at halftime that he has knee inflammation and he missed the second half. And they did enough in the first half just to hold like a big lead. Like they had a 26-point lead at one point on the road in Boston, game 3, Eastern Conference Finals, had a 26-point lead with basically their best player not even being much of a factor. But Bam Adebayo really came out and did what everybody wanted him to do, and that was be aggressive. He's just somebody that's way too talented on both ends of the floor, but even offensively, he's so talented. His game has come so far that you don't want to see this man only putting up 8 points or 6 points in a playoff game. Like you don't need that to happen for the Miami Heat for them to be successful. And I think Robert Williams being out was a big part of why he was able to go off, because when you have Horford and Tice in there, it's a little easier to get buckets in against Robert Williams, who's a depoy candidate this season. So Bam really did his thing, and he had a big time game. He was being aggressive from the jump. He had like 12 first quarter points, and he set the tone and gave the Heat a lot of confidence. And even though the Celtics were able to come back, cut the lead all the way down to 1, Miami just kept making plays, kept making shots, forcing turnovers. Max Strus hit the biggest three of the game, which pushed it to a 4-point game. After the C's cut it to 1, which felt like all the momentum was on the Celtics side. That was just a big time shot from Max Strus, and he made some big defensive plays. MVPs of this game, obviously I mentioned Bam. PJ Tucker was big. He had Jason Tatum in hell all game. 3 of 14, I think, for Tatum. Just another bad game 3 for him. He had a bad game 3 in Milwaukee, and now tonight at home he had another bad game 3. He has to come back and be better, man. I'm not gonna spend too much time talking about Jason Tatum and how much better he needs to play for this Celtics team to win this series. But for the Miami Heat, MVPs, PJ Tucker, Bam, obviously. Kyle Lowry came back, really controlled the pace of this game too. But Victor Oladipo, I think he was not the biggest reason, but one of the X factors in this game. Probably outside of Bam, I'll say he was the most impactful. Only had, I think, 5 points in the game, maybe 6 points or something like that. And 5 of them were free throws. But he was incredible, man. I mean, he stripped Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, I think, 5 times. I think he had 5 steals, and they were all strips of Tatum and Brown. One stretch in the third quarter, he stripped Jaylen Brown like 3 or 4 times in a row, like every time they were matched up. Stripped Jaylen Brown. JB had an amazing game. He had 40 points. But those were big third quarter turnovers because the Celtics could not cut into that 15-point lead in that third quarter. And as soon as they did, it was a big turnover or the Heat just hit a big shot. Miami showed championship resilience in this game. And I think it proves that like their run in the bubble was not really a fluke. I know this series is still far from over, but they have championship pedigree. They have championship DNA. It's all through that organization. And they showed it tonight. In the second half where Jimmy Butler doesn't play, The Celtics had momentum going into halftime, and they were able to weather the storm. And even though the Celtics had a chance to win this game, the Heat gave the Celtics every opportunity to win this game, but they weren't able to do it because Miami made plays, and the Celtics didn't capitalize. They were turning the ball over, being very loose with the ball. The free throw disparity was in favor of the Celtics. It just seemed like everything was going the Celtics' way to pull off a 26-point comeback, but Miami was able to hold off. And big time win, man, because everything's looking like Jimmy Butler's going to be okay, so he should be back. And you got the road win. So you get home court back. That's just big time, man, because this series is far from over. And I'm kind of glad as a basketball fan that it is, because it just felt like after those first two games, it seemed like the Celtics were the superior team. But you can't count Miami out, man. And that's one thing that we need to really understand as a basketball community. I love to see it, man. As for the C's, it's just like, hopefully Rob Williams can play. Spoelstra made the right adjustments, and Ime is going to have to make his proper adjustments. Can't come out that flat at home in a 1-1 series. Like, you just can't let that happen, man. Like, the Celtics did not deserve to win this game, and it's a shame that Miami almost let them do it, because the Celtics played terrible. Really, outside of Jaylen Brown, everybody else was trash. Everybody else was garbage outside of Jaylen Brown, and that was throughout the entirety of the game. And even JB had stretches where he was just turning the ball over, like I mentioned. But outside of his 40-point production, Tatum was god-awful. Marcus Smart was okay. Shout out to him for coming back, because he had a nasty-looking ankle injury. We'll see how they manage that going forward. But it looked bad. I saw it. I'm like, I don't think he's gonna play again. But he came back like a few minutes later. That ankle's gonna be swollen as hell tomorrow morning, if it's not already swollen right now. But he showed just ultimate heart. Got to give credit to him. A lot of guys just went down in this game. Smart went down. Obviously Jimmy Butler went down. Tyler Hero had his leg wrapped. He did not really play in the fourth quarter at all. He had a terrible game. Tatum went out with a shoulder stinger. It was like bodies was going everywhere. And then Kyle Lowry and PJ Tucker just came back. So it's like, man, guys was getting hurt everywhere, like left and right, bro. But yeah, outside of JB, if JB didn't have the game he did, then this game wouldn't have even been worth talking about. But the game that Jaylen Brown had made this a competitive game, a good finish. But the Heat were able to close it out on the road. Now they're up 2-1. So we'll see if the Celtics can respond, because now they're in another position where, dang, you're down a game, going into a game 4. This feels very like the Bucks series. It feels a lot like that last series where the Celtics played so bad in game 3 of that series. Tatum was terrible, that the Celtics did not deserve to win that game, but they had a chance at the end to win that game. And this was very similar. I think both of those, the first two games, it was like, it was kind of back and forth. Then Milwaukee went on a big run. The Miami Heat did the same thing. Game 2, the Celtics dominated from the jump. And game 3 was pretty similar. So we'll see if the Celtics can respond. Tatum has to be better. He's got to be the best player on the floor. PJ Tucker's doing a great job, but you got to be better, man. You got to be better. So we'll see how the Celtics respond. I'm just glad that this is a series, and hopefully the Mavs Warriors turns into a series too, because I didn't record a preview for the conference finals, but I was going to come on here and say Mavs in 6. And I still think the Mavs can win the series. I don't think those first 2 games are like, oh, the Warriors are just dominant, like they're unbeatable. I don't think that's the case. Game 2 was kind of weird because, I guess I'll just touch on the series real quick. Game 2 was kind of weird because Luka had 42, Brunson had 31, Reggie Bullock had 21. They hit like 50% of their 3-point shots. They had a 17-point lead, and then they just couldn't close it out. They went on a little cold stretch, and the Warriors heated up. Steph Curry heated up. Klay Thompson had a nice second half. Wiggins, Kevon Looney, Otto Porter, Jordan Poole. It was just like everything went wrong for the Mavs at the worst time, and then the Warriors capitalized in the third quarter, and they're able to close the game out. So I still think, like I said, I still think Dallas can make this a good series. I still think they'll have a chance to win this series because they just went through this, and maybe you can argue that the Suns and the Warriors are not the same teams, but I still think that the Mavs can match up. I still think they match up pretty well with them, other than the Kevon Looney impact, which is really big. But Jason Kidd's shown that he can make the right adjustments. And after those first 2 games in Phoenix last series, I thought they were dead in the water, but they responded in a big way. So we'll see if they can hold home court. Hopefully they can, for the sake of viewership, and hopefully they're competitive games too, because it just seems like there's been a lot of blowouts in the playoffs. So it was good to see tonight turn into a good game. It was good to see the game the other night from the Warriors and Mavs turn into a good game. Hopefully that trend continues because we just want to watch good basketball as fans. So, yeah, that's really all I got to say. Appreciate y'all for tuning in. Leave a like, subscribe if you are new. Don't think I said that at the beginning. And I'll probably be back tomorrow after Mavs Warriors if it's a good game. I'll catch y'all later. Peace.